You might notice on the channel this last while I'm moving cattle quite a lot. We're moving our calves and our heifers back and forth. They're on the silage field there at the moment, but that field was well enough grazed with the heifers. There was just a little bit of regrowth on it, so I wanted the smaller calves to eat, which they have now, but I've noticed that they're tramping, and I certainly don't want to tramp my silage fields. It's given a hell of a lot of rain tonight. Storm Bert or something like that. It's due to hit the night, and it's bringing, well, high winds, but a hell of a lot of rain. It's time to get them out of there. I'll let them in here. It's a big field. So today's Friday, and we did rebook our TB test, which is happening now on Wednesday morning next. So I don't want to change anything or bring our heifers home, put our calves in. There is nice bit of grass here, and it's not too wet at the minute. But when our test is done, and hopefully fingers crossed we get a clear test, that's Saturday after, when we're reading the animals, reading the results. If all goes to plan, well, we have to bring them home anyway. Our heifers will be coming home and our calves will probably go inside. That'll bring us into December, and that's not bad. I'm happy enough with that. Right, let's continue on. Now, my girls will be home from school half day on Friday. My visible watch tells me it's 1 o'clock. They'll be home in about 15 minutes, but if I can't do this myself, I'll go home and get lunch and bring them back with me, and we'll definitely get them out. But I'm going to chance it and see how we get on. I usually like to sing when I'm working. I don't do it on camera. It's not for the fact that I get a copyright. My voice is that bad, no one would ever pick up what I'm actually singing, but I just don't want to put you through that. Right, so yard gates is closed. I just have to open that one, quarters crossed down there. The gates is closed on the road in case I go through it. And we should be ready to rock. Now, someone did ask me, Adrian, did you put this gate in the wrong place? I was asked it a couple of times. It's not in the wrong place, it's an ideal spot. If I put it down there, it'd be no better, because, well, you could, I suppose, bring cattle straight over to the silage field or whatever, but it's not very often I'm doing that. But here's the driest part going into this field, and you have a wall on this side as a kind of a barricade, and it's a nice place just to come up that lane there and just come up and drive straight in here with a tanker. And yes, it might be a bit awkward maybe with cattle. It's not that bad. You see the kind of way I do it the last time where I tricked them, which I'm going to do now, bring them over again the wall and just bring them back. So to me, it's definitely not in the wrong place. I do need to make a gate there, right there in the corner, so the cattle come into that corner and I can let them straight in there if any animals was in that field, and bring them straight into the crush. So that is definitely a future job. And they're not making much of a hand now, but they are marking the field. Now it's freezing cold, that's why I'm all buffled up here, but it's a lovely day. Look at that sky, like you couldn't complain. Oh, and just as that. Alright, so that's Sinead. She comes home for lunch and she's picking the girls up from school today. That gives me a wee bit of extra time. Success. I see those ones walked the other side of the wire. That's not ideal. That's not the end of the world. There is another way of doing this. They're doing that on purpose, of course. They know they're on the wrong side of the gate. They're just playing awkward. So that's where a reel comes into place. Go back in that field, use. Come back in there. So now we have a reel going the whole way up along there. Now it's not live. I'm hoping they'll not try to go underneath it, but that eliminates the idea of running down the field. So now if I move away, come on, successes, and just be very patient. It's amazing what they'll do themselves. Now, don't go through that lower cord. Should be 14 there. I'm just counting them. 2 and 2's 4 and 2's 6 and 2's 8 and 2's 10, 2's 12, 2's 13. Alright. I just dodged a bullet. These forks, this outer one here on this side came off when I was on the road when I was coming back from the other farm. Just with the bouncing and stuff on the road. There is little catches here. Sometimes these latches, if they're not down properly or sitting kind of like that, it can move. And it did move, and it came off right off the end here when actually underneath the tractor. And it didn't hit the engine, because you can imagine if the wheel hit that, it'd go through the tyre, or it could go up underneath the tractor and that could bust the block of a tractor, because that is tough stuff. That's not going to bend. So yeah, that was a skid mark moment. And when I bought this, I noticed it never had studs in here. and it's supposed to have 2 studs you can put in here on both ends, so if this does ever slide out or that ever happens, that they can't come off either end. There we go, that'll never move. So now this comes across, it can't come out. So this morning we're just making here, and you can see we're down a unit, completely dead. That should be giving us plenty of air, but there's nothing coming out of that there. So just about to wash the making machine here after making. And if you can hear that hissing sound, well, if you look there, you can see that button. It should be sucked up into that hole. It shouldn't be leaking any air. Look at one of the other ones. You can see they're up the whole way. So that gives me a good clue what might be wrong here. So if you can see here as well, it's not really washing. Compared to the rest of them, it's not really washing at all. You can still hear the air hissing. So we need to fix them couple of things that was just showed you there earlier on. This is the unit here that's giving the trouble. So there's a couple of things that could be causing this. A lot of people, if they had milk and parlours back in the 80s and 90s, would have remembered these fixed switches. There's still plenty of them in circulation still and in use today. And they're very, very reliable. They rely on the vacuum air that comes from the milking machine itself. You're fed by a little vacuum pipe, which comes in there just at the top on that blue pipe. It makes its way down here, which goes into these control switches. And these control switches, when we flip back and forth by moving the switches a certain way, this guy here will suck in and it will let out. At the minute it's out, so it's not putting any crease in the pipe. But if you flick the switches that way, for instance, this here will pull in and it will squeeze this pipe, and that will block the milk that's coming from the bottom of the jar into the milk pipe. It's a very simple design, and it doesn't tend to give much trouble. But there are a couple of little things that can go wrong. And one of them things, well, the most common one, is this guy here on top of the jar. It's a little housing, and inside that housing there's a rubber diaphragm. I'm going to show you it now in a few minutes. Some of the indications when the diaphragm has cracked would be this little plunger here flipping down and not getting sucked up, and that in turn will suck in air. The machine then will lose vacuum and you won't get much suction from that unit itself. The whole machine will lose vacuum, but that unit itself will suffer the most. That, I believe, is what's gone wrong here. I've never had it that it completely stopped. I've often had it get weak and the milk wouldn't stay in the jar. It'd be letting out the milk the whole time because it hadn't got enough vacuum to hold the milk in the jar. But this time it's a little different, so we may have a couple of things going on. So remove this diaphragm, very easy. Flick this little bar down and pull it up, and here is our diaphragm. This tube here is going down to them switches as well. And there is our diaphragm right there. We can take this off completely. Push from the bottom here. There it is, that's it out. Right, so we're looking here to see, is there any cracks in this diaphragm? I don't see any. Well, that is unusual. I have another one here. I'm going to pop it in anyway, in case I am missing something. I don't think I am, but I'm going to pop it in anyway. And at least we should be alright on that end of things. Just put this back in. I think I have that right. You go down there. This finally goes in. Right. Well, that's as much as I can do there. Alright, well that normally fixes it, but as I said, this is slightly different, as in the fact that the unit completely stopped working. So we're going to have a look at something I just spotted here, which is different than the rest of them. So I think I showed it earlier on my phone while I was milking, but I see moisture. In fact, I don't know if you can see it there on the camera, but there's water in that pipe. See that level there? And that water could be interfering with the flow of air that's coming in and going up through these pipes. So I'm going to take these pipes off, get rid of that water for starters. Open this here up, there's a wee ball in here. I want to look and make sure it's not cracked. These pipes are on since 2008, so a wee bit of heat just to take the hardness out of them. If you don't do that, you could end up in a mess. See that water run out, look at, see that? That could be part of our problem. Now if you don't heat them up, these guys here will just snap off, because it's only a plastic Y, and over time when it gets perished and stuff, it goes hard and it gets very brittle. So if you warm it up, it allows it to bend a little bit of give, and it doesn't break. No water in that now. Sometimes when the machine's washing, this ball doesn't clean very well. You can get like a buttery scum on it, which is just basically the fat of milk. So sometimes I've noticed the machine just isn't able to clean it, although this time it is clean. There's this just a little plastic ball. There's no cracks in it. Working. So I'm just going to do a couple of tests on here just to make sure that it is working right at the minute. Working now. Now this is where the buttons come into play. You can see the little plastic ball in there. Alright, so at the minute 2 buttons are up. That means we're holding the milk in the jar. If I had a cow with penicillin, I didn't want to let it into the milk tank, I'd always have the 2 switches up like that. That holds the milk in the jar. This is where the jars become very handy, especially during calving season when you're holding milk from certain cows for certain calves. Now when I'm doing a standard milking and I don't want to hold any milk in the jar, I just leave them like that there. But with that there, when the milk in the jar reaches the same level as the milk pipe, which is just here with my finger pointing, it will never pass that level. And every time you take it off a cow, put it on another cow, a little bit of air gets released. And it will always stay at that level. That's great if you're just doing a continuing milking and you don't need to hold the milk for any specific reason. Now obviously some people do it different. Some people will hold the milk and then empty the jar, 2 buttons down, and then that way you can check how much each individual cow is given. I do that as well, but not all the time. Most of the time I will have it set that it just continually flows into the jar here. So once it runs down this pipe, it goes into that jar, and then inside that jar there's a little float, and that little boy there, if you can see him, he comes up that rod, and when he gets to a certain level, the pump here will automatically kick in. It'll get pumped up in the air there and into the milk tank. So I'm going to flick this bottom switch down here. This should empty the jar. Yeah. That's working. Flick them back up to hold. But that's the way it works. It's a very, very simple setup. There's no air leaking at the minute. Funny feeling that could have been causing it. So that's that problem solved, but we have another one. And this is another common issue, and believe it or not, it's with these switches. Now I've put in these about 2008. It's a right while ago now they're in, and these were second hand when I put them in. Been flicked up and down quite a few times. I've never had an issue with them until a neighbour said to me one night in the pub that his heart was broke with them because there's a little spring inside, a spring that I had never seen. There's a tendency to break, and he was breaking them constantly, and I said his heart was broke changing them. I'd never heard of that problem until he said that. But a week later, one of them broke, another one broke, another one broke, another one broke, and within the space of 2 months we probably broke about 5 or 6 of them. He definitely either put a curse on me or jinxed it. He knows who he is and he's probably laughing away now. There's a good healthy switch here. Good clicky switch. You come to this one and you can see this one here is working fine, but look at this one. That's not working at all. It's just sticking in place and it's literally doing nothing. We'll take this apart and show you where the fault is. I know a lot of people cringe when they see a pair of vice grips coming out, but for doing this job they're actually the best man of the lot. There's a little nut there I have to loosen. Let's screw it off by hand now. There, a little stainless steel nut. Have to take off. So now we have 4 little Phillip head stainless steel screws that have to come out. Now you have to hold this down because that spring is going to push up. Okay. Yeah, there's the spring broken too. There's our culprit. So that piece is obviously broken off there. That's the length she's supposed to be. One of the biggest tips I can give you is always keep spares. So I keep the little air pipes that go down the side of the clusters. I have another diaphragm in there, the same as the one you've seen. I have liners here, so we always keep them in hand. They go regular. I also have a bag of stuff, I think what I want. They're there, that's what I want right on that. It's great to have spares. I have a spare VP76 milk pump up there too. I rebuilt it about 3 years ago, put new vanes and everything into it, so if that one ever gives up on me, you never know. On a Friday evening, it never happens on a weekday during the daytime. It always happens on a weekend or at night time when everywhere's kind of closed, and that's when the breaks come. So having as much spare parts on hand, the better. So up in the attic I have spare, couple of spare switches. I have one of these spare as well. I've also got some of this clear pipe. I've got plenty of this black pipe for the pulsation and for the milk tube. I've got loads of that. A lot of it was second hand that came from the old milking parlour that I bought. Bits I didn't use, just spare pieces. There's just another piece of plastic there. That's just for the washed claw pieces. I keep them. They have a habit of breaking there on the legs. Thing here we want to replace. That's the new one versus the old one. Is that there sits in here. If you look in there, you see the end of the switch. It's basically on a wee rocker switch. And that spring pushes into that. Can't really go wrong. So I have a few more of those springs, I think, in that bag. They're in there, yeah. I went to change a battery in my clock. Fell out of my hand. You know, cheap clock, was there a long time. And broken pieces on the floor, so. Should have took me time when I was doing it. Time, clock. So today, I don't even know what date it is. I've lost track completely. I guess around the 29th or something like that. But I do want to share some good news. And it's nice to have some good news to share. So remember I told you in a couple of videos ago that we were due to have a TB test. And we put it off for the obvious reason of, well, what's happening just in the house at the moment with my father. But the good news is, we did our TB test last Wednesday. We tested and then we got our results this morning, Saturday. We got a clear test, which was great. I normally be jumping for joy, it's just, I'm actually quite tired. We are all very tired, it's just, the routine in the home has changed quite a bit, but I am really, really pleased. That weight is off my shoulders now, I don't have to worry about TB. The first thing I done was go into the house and tell my dad that we got clear. And he winked, he nodded his head, put a smile on his face, and that said a million words. He'd normally be standing looking out. He knew it was dangerous for him to be in the yard with cattle and stuff, but he'd always be peeping his head out at the very, very end of every test to see that we get clear. So it was good to be able to share that news with him. So that's it, I'm going to leave it there now for the day. I'm going over now straight away, me and the girls, it's Saturday, and we're going to dose our heifers and we're going to draw them home in the trailer, put them in the shed here behind us. And then our young calves will go into that shed in place of the heifers, and every animal then will be in because it has rained the rates up now, and I think all cattle will be far safer inside now. Anyway guys, thanks for watching the video as always. Just to mention again, because we're right on that time, the merchandise is there if you go and check it out. A lot of the stuff now can be customised, and to do that we need to have your orders in just to guarantee for Christmas for the 5th of December. So just giving you that warning so nobody's disappointed. It's there, link in the description for all of that stuff. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Let's do something else.